Aloha and welcome. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about reloading modules. So at some point in your career, you're probably going to find yourself using a script that runs for a very long time. It could be doing just about anything. I think that we had an example in the book where they're talking about an emailer that is sending out thousands upon thousands of emails, and you don't want to interrupt it and start over, or else people are going to start getting duplicates, and that's never a good thing. So that's one example. It could be that maybe you have a script that's monitoring a sensor, and that sensor is sending out information all the time, and you want to make small adjustments to it or change the way certain things are handled. So you don't want to interrupt this script. You don't want to bring it down. You want to be able to reload some things in place. So we're talking here specifically about modules. Let's say that we have a module that we're using, and we want to reload that module on the fly while we're still running our code. That's possible. We have our import at the top of the script, but later on, if we need to, or if we want to check for something, we can do a reload on a module to refresh it to see if something has changed. So the book uses the example of, I think, send Gmail function, something like that. And I think they changed the header, and they want to be able to, do that on the fly. So that's a great example, but I don't think it's something that particularly interesting. So I thought I would come up with an example here just to show you not a reason to use it, but how it's actually used. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and I'll bring up code. So if you'll remember, before we had this do nothing module that essentially did nothing at all. I modified it a little bit. We've got a definition here of nothing for a function. We have two variables described, 10 and 11 for no number one, or no number and no number two. And then we have print no number in here. And then we have this, if it's main, we're going to print it, we're going to run nothing, which says I will not do anything. So let's go ahead in here. We're going to print out no number. And the reason I'm doing that is I want to show you what we're going to do. Let's go in here and do an import of do nothing. So as is, when we run this, it should do nothing terribly interesting. It's going to print out 10, which is what we expect to do over here. So over here, in order to do the reload, we need to import a specific package that includes the reload functionality. And that is, let's see, we're going to do a from import lib is the name. We're going to import specifically reload. That way we don't get everything that's in import lib, because we don't need it. We just want reload. So what we're going to do now is we're going to, we've already imported do nothing up here. We've included the reload functionality. Now I'm going to set up something that you should never be doing on your own. You don't want to set this up while true. We're going to set up an infinite loop here. And infinite loops, as we learned in the past, are bad. We don't like infinite loops. But in the sense, well, in the case of monitoring something forever, like monitoring a temperature sensor and just taking the data and printing it out or sending it somewhere, maybe this isn't such a bad idea. An infinite loop isn't a bad thing because you want to do that continuously. So in here, we're going to do a reload of do nothing. And every time it cycles, it's going to reload do nothing, which is going to be very resource intensive. And this probably isn't the greatest thing to do. You may want to do a check to see if the file has changed or something like that. And if it has changed, then you'll want to reload it, because that will be a little bit resource intensive. So looking at do nothing, we're going to do a reload there. And every time we do it, it's going to be printing out no number, which is 10 at this point. So if we save this and we run it, what do you think is going to happen? Well, it should be printing 10 over and over, right? So now we're going to go into do nothing. And because it's constantly reloading do nothing, it's printing out no number here. If we were to add a couple zeros in here, it doesn't take long. And then you see that the thing updates over here, and it's changing that. If we change it down to 1, within a couple cycles, it's going to be doing, it'll be displaying 1, because it's reloading this every single time. So this is really not a good idea, because this is going to get the system running a little bit hot here. So we're interrupting it, stopping it. It's no longer going to be loading this here. The thing to remember is when you do a reload like this, it is going to refresh your module objects namespace. It's going to take all the definitions from here. It's going to refresh them. The one thing that it will not do is, in the case of a, if you're using from, like up here to do it, let's say you do an import of do nothing, and then let's say from do nothing, import no number 2. So we're going to grab no number 2 here, and we're going to say over here, print f no number, we're going to say no number 2 is, and then we're going to put in no number 2, and that is going to, so that will be correct here. So we're going to run this. No number 2 is 11, the other one is 1. So that's what we kind of expect here. But over here, remember what happens when we import no number 2. When we do a from do nothing import no number 2, we're taking this and we're hoisting this into the top, into the global scope here. Over here with the import do nothing, we're leaving it in the namespace. So if I wanted to access no number, the first one, I would have to say do nothing dot no number. And then if I wanted to get to no number 2, I'd say do nothing dot no number 2. But here, what I'm doing is I'm importing no number 2 from do nothing, and I'm putting it into our global context here. So by doing that, this is no longer going to be in the do nothing namespace. So when we do a reload down here, this thing that we've hoisted into our global context, it's not going to change. And we can test that out by changing it inside do nothing and see if it changes in here. So we're going to start this thing running, and we're seeing, no number 2 is 11. If we go into here and we change no number, let's say no number, we're going to make that 1,000 or some big number. We'll make that a big number. And then this one over here, we're going to change that from 11 to all 9s. We would expect to see no number 2 is all 9s, but we don't. And why is it not? Because over here, we have moved no number 2 up into the global global context. So that's not changed when we do a refresh of do nothing. So do nothing, the namespace here, everything is refreshed in there. And if we were to actually stop that, and if we were to stop that and in here try to access no number 2, we could do that. So if we were to put in let's go ahead and kill our program first. If we were to kill that and then go in here and we're going to put in no number 2 is, and now we're going to access the one that's in the do nothing namespace. You're going to see that we have 2 different versions of it. We're going to have the one that we globally hoisted, and we're going to have the one that's still in the namespace there. So when we run this, we're going to see that it's 9999. But now, when we change it and do nothing, let's say we change that to a shorter version of that. Notice that one of them changes, but the other one doesn't. That's exactly why I was talking about. One of them is in your global context. It's been hoisted up there, and it's not going to be changed by this. And the other one is, so one of them is, this one here changes. This one here does not change. And this one doesn't change because this one we hoisted up into the global context. So the reloads are only affecting the ones that are in the namespace of do nothing here. So this can be very useful in general when you're doing some kind of a long-term process and you need to update something on the fly. If you want to reload it, change the way you're handling things. this is the way to do it, using that reload. So that's the extent of this lesson. They did introduce one other topic, which was interesting, and that was using the dunder file. If you wanted to look at a module, and let me take this out and show you. Module names also have something associated with them. That is the yeah, do nothing. We're not going to reload here. We're just going to do a print. So we'll print, and because we didn't really do this example, it didn't really matter for us, but you can find the file name of a module, you know, that it's associated with. So if you ran this, you would get the file of the the module. So this is something that's kind of nice. Once you've imported the module, you can find the file name for it, which gives you the path and everything else just by asking for the module name dot dunder file dunder. So that's a neat little thing to have in there to know about it. But again, oh, also we had learned previously about name as well. So if you were to use name there, you could pull up the name of the module. So those are two little things that you know, you have access to. So this was something that was introduced in this lesson. We didn't need it for our example, but in their example, they were trying to check and see if a certain file had changed. And if that file had changed, then they wanted to update it. And that's what makes it more efficient. So you're not doing that constant reload. You're only reloading if that file has been modified. So anyhow, that concludes the lesson. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, reach out, and I'd be happy to set up a Zoom lesson if you like. So take care, and I'll see you in the next lesson.